One man alone against the puzzle of his life, trying to chip away at the diamond-hard shield to home. Can the Doctor escape his confession dial through the portal to Gallifrey? Get ready for our review today in the Vortex.
Broadcast amplitude at maximum capacity. Transmitting through time and space in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Vortex.
Voices from the Vortex Reviews, Series 9, Episode 11, Heaven Sent. Hey, boo-boo, that was a really good episode of Doctor Who.
But Yogi, they're all good.
Shut it.
Ah.
That was a really good episode.
Yes. Hey, it's Taylor.
And it's Matt.
And we're here in the Vortex. And we're so happy because this episode was amazing. Simply,
it was the best episode
amazing.
This season.
No, it was the best episode this season. It was the best Capaldi episode. It was
the best Capaldi episode.
One of Stephen Moffat's top 5, at least, episodes. And one of the best Doctor Who episodes ever, in my opinion. It was fantastic.
It really was. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for all season to see. And while we got stuff that was kind of good and was definitely better than the rest, this is the crown jewel. And to think, this was Moffat wrote this, before season 8. This was his big cliffhanger that he had in mind. This is the thing he always knew he was going to write, and it was going to be so great, and he was building everything to this. So I think it was worth it. I think it paid off. This was truly, honestly, an incredible episode.
Yeah. Really good. I loved pretty much everything about this episode. There's a couple of things I had some questions, like why this, why that they didn't really answer. But I don't even really care. Sure. I don't care because it was so good. I'm able to look past those things because this episode just made me so happy when I watched it. I loved everything about it. The whole Capaldi by himself, it didn't get old. It was just brilliant, and I loved just all the parts of it. It was great.
Yeah, well, and the premise is a good idea. One man trying to figure something out on his own, which is really nice. You need more Doctor scenes where it's just the Doctor, and Capaldi has not really gotten that because he was always playing off of Clara and Danny, and then Clara. And I felt like we needed this moment. You got plenty of these moments with Matt Smith in his first episode, let alone first season. You got plenty of these episodes with David Tennant. You got a lot of this with Chris Eccleston. You never really got this moment with Capaldi up until now, where he was alone, having to work things out on his own. So it was definitely worth the wait. Definitely.
Yeah.
Big thing. It was the confession dial all along.
Yeah.
Which is obviously Time Lord technology. It was bigger on the inside.
Yeah. I thought that was
there are a couple of questions about the confession dial.
I do have a question. Well, okay, obviously he had the bracelet on and he was teleported into the confession dial. Last we saw the confession dial, though, a shielder had it. Mayor Me, took it from him. And so did she mail it to Gallifrey, or my question is, how did the Doctor get to Gallifrey through the confession dial? Hopefully, maybe they'll answer this next episode, but it wasn't clear to me how that happened.
Well, and that's a good question. I have a bigger question. Who made the confession dial? Wasn't it him?
Yeah, I was confused. They never... it was
so
a whole thing
why
about...
would he make something and then not know what's in it?
Well, yeah, that was interesting, because I remember the last episode, she gets the confession down from him, and she says something like, "What's on it?" And he says, "I hear it's my last will and testament," or something. Like, maybe he doesn't know what's on it.
Interesting.
And so then so what it turned out to be, which I thought was a cool idea, was sort of this torture chamber that you're subjected to make you confess, and then that's where the confessions are inside, and it's like someone's monitoring you as you're trapped inside this thing, which that was kind of interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that idea. I like the claustrophobia of it all, but it does raise some huge questions.
Yeah.
You know, how does it lead him to Gallifrey? Was it? I get that he went through a portal that was inside the confession dial that took him to Gallifrey, and then the confession dial itself, you know, folded in on itself and existed where he was.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, sure, why not? You know, but how did it have a portal to Gallifrey inside of there? And
right.
More importantly, how come he didn't know if it's his confession dial? So those are all good questions. Hopefully, are answered in the next episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really interesting, and I thought it was so great how instead of confessing to what he was going to confess, he spent 2 billion years, over 2 billion years, just breaking out of it. He just said, you know what, I'm gonna just like take this long route and just break out of this thing, so I don't have to confess this. I thought that was great.
Now, how long was he in there for? Because every iteration it was the same thing. How long was he in there for every iteration?
I don't know exactly how long it took. There were times that...
Was it like a week or a day?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Well, he said it took him about a day and a half to make that climb after he was gotten by the monster, make that climb all the way back to the top of the tower. So that's a day and a half. Then he talked about how if he could run from one side of the building to the other, he would give himself 82 minutes of time.
Right.
So how he figured that out? How many times
around and learning?
So how many times did he have to do that to figure it out? He also had a notebook, so he was obviously like drawing the castle. So that might have taken him a long time. Yeah, it just.
So we could probably assume that each one of his iterations in there was probably a couple of weeks.
Weeks or a month, yeah.
Or a month, maybe.
Say, yeah.
That sounds about right. So, I guess, in addition to that, one of the catches of the confession dial was that some things in there reset, where other things didn't reset.
Yeah, that was really interesting. He talked about how
the big thing.
It was like it was sort of a little bit of a housekeeping, and obviously like the flowers reset, and the stool that he threw out the window, and some other things.
But the skulls that landed in the water did not.
Yeah.
Nor did the wall of Asbantium.
Yes. And I was waiting for an answer, but they didn't give us one, and I thought, well, you know, it's okay. I assumed the skulls in the water because maybe they weren't actually like in the castle; they were out in the water. And then I thought,
sure.
But then the skull, like after he fried himself so that he could, you know, re-upload himself into the confession dial.
Yeah.
That skull stayed there. You know, I wondered why that skull didn't, you know, go away like his bloodstains did, or when he wrote "bird" in the sand. So there was, and then obviously the diamond wall. He slowly chipped away at it. It didn't reset at all. So, yeah, there was no real answer for that. It was just kind of pick and choose what was convenient for the.
But we did definitely see how many skulls were in the water before he got a chance to start punching the wall.
Well, yeah. Well, that's interesting.
So,
because the
7,000 years worth of...
The first iteration we see is the 7,000th year. Which is really interesting because that tells us that maybe his first year was pretty similar, but maybe a little different. Maybe there weren't any skulls in the water, so maybe some of the dialogue and things that he said and did weren't the same. But he realized at the end of the first iteration, like, oh, I need to kill myself so that I can re-upload myself in this whole thing. Like, and they started punching it on the first day. Because there was like a tiny dent in it. There was like a little bit of a dent in it when he started it on the 7,000th year.
Well, and
so that would have been
many
interesting.
Skulls were in there. We'd have to imagine that maybe his earlier, for 6,000 years or so, maybe the very first time he walks right up to the thing to talk to it, and it kills him. And then, he makes little changes, like he doesn't know to throw the chair through the window or the table through the window for the first 4,000 years. So all these skulls that end up there, right. Are skulls from versions of him where he didn't even get a chance to, get to the wall. And maybe we're just seeing him as he's just now figured out how to get to the wall, and that's kind of what sticks with him. So he's following this pattern over and over again.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's hard to think about because the interesting thing is that every time he re-uploaded himself, it was as he was right after Face the Raven. So like he didn't know anything. Every time he came back, he didn't remember any of the stuff that he's seen in the confession dial. Everything's new to him. So I have to assume that it was the same every time, except for the details of maybe the first time when things weren't there, that they are there then the next time. So I would assume that the first time he maybe does all the same things, but he doesn't see all the skulls in the water. He doesn't take the first skull up to fall into the water. But he does all the same stuff and gets to the wall and then crawls to the top and then sacrifices himself to re-upload himself and makes that first skull, writes the word bird, and then that starts the whole loop-de-loop.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe. I would maintain he doesn't even get to the wall for a while at first, and that's just because you wouldn't, you're right, there were certain details that weren't there.
Yeah.
He wasn't thinking of it, the clothes. When was the first time he left the clothes there?
Right.
Yeah. Those could have been put in there for him. I don't know, but when did he first fall in the water, and when did he first leave the clothes there? And all right, well, maybe he did. Maybe he took off his clothes to dry them, and he gets caught and dies. And so he has to crawl naked up to the tower again and do the thing. And all right, so now
the clothes are there.
Clothes, yeah,
it's a never-ending. Yeah, and then the loop keeps with the clothes. Yeah, that was interesting because there were other things that were confusing to me. Were the arrows, like that in that room? There were arrows on the ground. And I was like, well, who draws arrows on the ground? Who draws in chalk on the ground? 12. He does that. That's something he does. So that sort of gave me a hint as to what was going to happen later. But then also, who wrote "I am in 12"? In the ground that was buried. I was really confused on like how that related to that little bit of sand with the arrows pointing to it.
But again, that all could have been the puzzle that was set up for him. We don't know who made the confession dial. If the confession dial was made by the Time Lords as a clue to help him find Gallifrey, and they want to ensure that only he figures it out, so he's the one that comes back, and not, anyone else, not the Daleks, not the Cybermen, not the Jadoon, not the Master, whoever, then maybe the reason all that stuff was there was to give him clues as to what he had to do next. The arrows were already preset in this place to tell him that he's going to have to dig in the dirt. And the I am in 12 was buried there, so he'd know to start looking for the number 12, and that's specifically looking for the door numbers. So, all this is one big missed game to get the Doctor to figure out that he needs to break down this wall. And it's just like the Time Lords. It's just like the Time Lords, not only to make it a little difficult, but more importantly, to put a punishment. To succeed at the puzzle, he has to die over and over again. He has to hurt himself punching that wall over and over again.
Right.
And it's terrible and it's horrible. And that's because they wanted to make sure the person who did it truly, honestly wanted to do it. And the only person who would search for Gallifrey that hard is him.
That's interesting, because the way I saw it as something like the Doctor, he's trapped in the confession dial, and they need him to confess. You know, they know what they want him to confess about is the stuff about the hybrid. But instead of doing that, he breaks out of it and makes his way to Gallifrey through the confession dial somehow. Now, maybe sort of these arrows and the thing that was buried and a couple of these other things that were maybe set, maybe somebody tampered with it to help him, get to Gallifrey. I don't know if the Time Lords wanted him to get to Gallifrey because what it looked like was that he broke the rules of this confession dial, and he took over 2 billion years just to break out of the thing, rather than simply telling the monster what he was supposed to tell him, and then who knows what would have happened after that. After he confessed about the whole thing, maybe they would have let him out or whatever, or killed him or whatever. I don't know, but I feel like he cheated the system, and instead of like that was the plan all along. I feel like he said to the kid, he said, "I took the long way around." So, which was a great line because it references the 50th when he says,
"The 50th,
I'm going home the long way around." So that was really great.
I've been after watching this episode. I know we talked a little bit about it, and I'm talking with some of my friends about it too. This is not the Time Lords' first attempt to get the Doctor to get to them. I think this is. I think this is their second test to get the Doctor to find them. I think their first test was, using the cracks in space and time, and putting a truth field around Christmas so the Doctor would be attracted there, and then he'd have to tell the truth, and they ask him his name, and then they could bring them out. And the Doctor fails at this. He fails gloriously at this, because he spends 1,000 years fighting everything that ever existed just to fail at the end to allow Gallifrey to get through. And they recognize that. That's why they give him this new set of regenerations. And then they leave. This is the second attempt. Alright, the Doctor screwed it up the first time. Now we're going to give him a direct portal. But we have to make sure that it's him and no one else. So they make it difficult. They make it where he has to confess. And he has to confess to big things that the Doctor has never confessed to before. It has to be truths to prove that it's really him. And when he confesses, it freezes time and gives him, one step closer to getting to the wall to home. And when he comes back and he's telling this kid, and he's saying, run to whoever's in charge and let him know I'm back. And if they ask who it is, tell them I came the long way around. I think what he's doing is he's saying, they're waiting for me. And if some kid comes running up and says, hey, this guy's here, they're not going to respond to it. But if they say, no, he's taking the long way around, that's the key phrase. That's how the Gallifreyans know, ooh, it's the Doctor. So I don't think they were trying to keep him from getting there. I think this was to get him there.
Well,
because he failed the first time.
Yeah, and you might be right, because if we think back to the last episode, it's obviously the Time Lords who've made this deal with a shielder to capture him, which she helps them. So, so maybe you're right on that point.
Well, and their power is growing, isn't it? It's possible they sent Missy to help him, to get him there. But she lies to him at the end of Season 8, doesn't she? She lies and says, oh, they're at this coordinate, they're back where they belong, you never thought to look there. They're not there. She lied. Mm-hmm. They sent her out thinking, maybe as punishment, thinking she'll help bring him back, and she ends up doing the crazy-ass stuff she always does. Yeah.
Because I'm always still curious about how she escaped the Time War, how she got back to the Doctor's universe, and they never still haven't answered that. So hopefully, maybe this next episode, that's something I'll get, which will be nice. The monster was kind of creepy in this too. It was
the
just...
Muppet with a hood?
Yes. It was just something from the Doctor's nightmares, which is really interesting.
Well, I love that he describes it. There was an old woman who died, and he was at her funeral. It was the middle of the summer, and the flies came out.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, he has no respect whatsoever for authority or the elderly. He never has.
Yeah.
And, like, he's just like, his ultimate nightmare is a dead old woman and wrapped in bandages with flies buzzing around her. Like, really, Doctor? Really?
Yeah. Well, I saw a sort of behind-the-scenes thing where the director, who did a fantastic job in this episode, I noticed some really awesome stuff.
Talele?
The camera work. Yeah, Talele. She was awesome. She was asking Moffat, like, how do this monster moves so slowly, I'm worried about making it scary. And he says, no, the scary part is that it never stops coming. It's always coming for you. No matter what you do, if you stop for too long, it will get you. So, like, it's always coming. And that truly was creepy about this episode. And the fact that there were the TV screens with the cameras where you could look and you were seeing its point of view, and that it was coming down the hall that you had just gone down or whatever. Like, that was really creepy and very, very well done.
Yeah, well, and it's sort of a double entendre in a way. It's sort of an allusion to death, isn't it? The idea that death is always coming for us. Mm-hmm. No matter what we do as people, as human beings in our life, we are going to die, and death is like a creature. It's reaching out for us. It's always moving towards us, and one day, if we stop long enough in life, it will catch up to us. At least, that's kind of what I saw. Was that it was a a metaphor for death, and that's a scary, deep thought to have to think about.
Oh yeah.
You don't normally want to think about that, and the fact that we're all going to die, except for the Doctor. I did like that this episode gave us some more explanation. We've been talking about the reason he left Gallifrey, and then obviously the hybrid schmybrid, prophecy schmophacy.
Yes.
But it's becoming clear to me now that hybrid that the Time Lords have a prophecy about the destruction of their own race, as all species would. And they say hybrid because that's how they interpret it. That it's something not exactly Time Lord. The Doctor clearly figured out that hybrid wasn't a hybrid, that it was him. That he was the thing that would destroy his people and his planet and Gallifrey. And it's just really interesting to me that I don't think the Time Lords know. I think that in all this time, in all the show, he's been running, praying, hoping the Time Lords never figure it out. Because if they did, they would come for him.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely...
They never did.
Yeah, there was definitely this red herring about the half Dalek, half Time Lord thing. And he even says at the end, Daleks would never allow that. It has to be all Dalek or nothing.
Yeah.
And so that he says he's the hybrid. Now, one of the things that came to mind after he said this was the television movie with Paul McGann. And he mentions he's half human on his mother's side.
Right.
So, and we all remember, I don't know what was it, last year, where Stephen Moffat was like, hey guys, does anyone know if the Doctor ever said he specifically wasn't half human? I want you guys to do the work for me and look that up. I think that may come into play.
Well, he was questioning whether or not Gallifreyans were aliens. Whether or not Gallifreyans have they ever said that Gallifreyans aren't humans?
Right.
And that's a fair point.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up. Couple of reasons. When we talk about the idea of a hybrid, the best reference obviously is the Doctor, because he's half human. And that's not just a joke, that's not just a drop in line, that is a piece of canon, whether we like it or not. All of New Who is riddled with hybrids. We've had a Dalek-human hybrid from season 3. It was one of the Daleks of the one of the 4 of the cult of Skaro turned himself into half Dalek, half human.
Yeah, and Oswin too, from series 7.
And
yeah,
hold on, let me get there.
Oh, okay.
And that same Dalek, the Doctor put Time Lord DNA into him, so that way all the Daleks would the Dalek mind controlled people would rebel against them.
Right.
So we've seen a Time Lord Dalek hybrid. We've seen a Dalek human hybrid. We have a Time Lord human hybrid. We have Donna, who was a hybrid. We have Clara, who's been a hybrid in several different ways. We have I'm trying to think of them all now, and there's more than that, and I just can't think of them all. But we have this list of hybrids, so it's a little too easy to go, yeah, he's the hybrid, he's half human, half Time Lord. That's what they must be referring to. I think what we'll see in this last episode is the Time Lords say hybrid. They think hybrid because it's something that's not just Time Lord. It's not just Gallifreyan. And I think in their mind's eye, it has to be something dramatic. It has to be something that the hybrid is a term, it's a word, it's a thing, it's a monster. We would use the same term to describe something that isn't pure one thing. Mm-hmm. If your ancestry, you're born of many different cultures or many different countries, you are a hybrid. Even though we wouldn't say hybrid, we're thinking hybrid. You're a mesh of stuff. I think maybe we'll find out that the prophecy is just, it's interpreted by Time Lords to mean something that isn't Time Lord. Mm-hmm. All that being said, I do still maintain that we're going to get the finishing touches of the Cartmel plan. That we are going to have the Doctor reveal, or it be revealed, that he was born as one of the progeny of one of the 3, the other. I still believe that a part of that is because, yes, he's half human, so he's got that human DNA in him, so he is something different. It's why the children didn't play with him when he was a kid. It's why he hid in that barn that night, began crying because he didn't want to go into the house with the other kids because they made fun of him, because he wasn't a true Time Lord, a true Gallifreyan, which is why he was so bad at the academy. Even though he was bad at doing all the stuff there, he was never as good at it as other people were. So I feel like this is all Stephen Moffat, who has talked about how much he loves the book Long Borrow, how this will all sort of culminate in the Doctor's culture, the Doctor's history, who his parents were, who he is a descendant of, and the introduction of that third character, the Other. I really feel like that's where all of this is headed.
Yeah, that would be great. See, I was thinking of the human Time Lord thing because the one thing that separates the Doctor from the other Time Lords is he's more emotional in his decisions, and I think that comes from his human side, and the Time Lords, who are very calculated and very just jerks about everything because they're like, this must be done and it has to be done this way, see that as a threat, as this could be something that could be dangerous and has to be dealt with. And so that's kind of what I saw. So it was like, oh, they're finding out he is actually, if they ever found out he was half human, which is the truth that he knew, this whole time. And the reason he ran away because he was scared. He thought, I can't stick around, or I'm gonna, I'll be found out that I'm half human and not, full Time Lord. And so that's why he was scared and he ran away. So,
but they would already know, because the Master found out during that episode. And, that movie, and even though the Master died, he was brought back and he remembered all of his memories. he was brought back to fight in the Time War.
Right.
So he clearly could have told them at any time,
he could
by
have.
the way, the Doctor's
Maybe,
half human.
Well, maybe they actually are really best friends, and he wouldn't tell. I don't know, but
or he's holding it close to the chest, so that way
yes.
it's something he can reveal later on to get him out of a scrape. Sure.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's where my mind went, and I don't know. I'm sure it will be none of that. What we all said,
right?
But as it always is, it's always something different. But you know, that's where my mind went anyway. But yeah, I would love to see that other stuff too. You know, with the other and all that.
Definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So what did you think of his mind palace?
That was great.
Are they just going to make Sherlock and Doctor Who the same show now?
He got confused about what he was writing, and he was like, "Oh, this will work for Doctor Who. I'll just throw it in there." I loved it. I thought it was great. I really liked the sort of the introduction of the chalkboards came back, you know, from last series.
Yeah.
They had the chalkboards that they used a lot in Series 8, and they really haven't used them much any in this one. I also enjoyed that Clara was there. You know, we were told this was going to just be Capaldi the whole time, and then, you know, we see the back of Clara's head
broke my heart. It was beautiful
for the longest time, and then she finally spoke up and sort of got him there. And what's beautiful about that is that this happens over 2 billion years, over and over again. Like he plays out these events in his head over 2 billion, at least over 2 billion times, of course, but over 2 billion years. So it's just, imagine he's reliving that Clara just died over and over and over. Even though he doesn't know that he's reliving it over and over and over again. And he doesn't realize it till the end of the day, or the end of the cycle, when he's like, "Oh, I have to die and I have to come back and punch the wall some more." That he's relived it so many times. But then he resets himself and he doesn't remember again. So it's like insanity.
Well, and it's interesting that he sees Clara that way, because we've seen the Doctor hold on to a person or a face and see them in the final moments of his life. Matt Smith, the very first face Eleven saw was Amelia Pond, and he sees her again at the very end, right before he leaves. Yeah. The first face that Capaldi sees is Clara. And so he sees her again, as he knows, in that moment, he knows he's going to die. And he's saying, "I want to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. Just let me give up. Just let me stop. Why does it have to be me?" That was that moment. He figured it out.
Why can't I just lose?
Right. And he sits down and she says, "No, you have to get up and you have to do this." And he sees her in his mind's eye, the same way Matt Smith saw Amelia. And that was, for me, I was bawling. That was beautiful.
Yeah, that was really great. And it was a pleasant surprise that she was there. I didn't think we were going to see her in the episode. I thought, oh, we'll just see the back of her head this whole time. She'll just be this. But then she was there. And it was, you're right. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And some of the really great quotes came from in that Mind Palace.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, my favorite line in this whole episode is, "I'm nothing without an audience," and then looks at the camera as he passes by. A little smile. It was brilliant. I love that. We've gotten a few instances now this season where Capaldi looks at the camera, and it's just, I love that Doctor Who breaking the fourth wall kind of thing.
Yeah. And
I wish they would do it more, because it's silly, but it's just the right amount of silly for this show, and it's great.
Right.
I love it.
I do like the line he gives, "Whatever I do, you still won't be there."
Oh, yeah.
Breaking my heart.
Right before she comes and speaks to him. Yeah, that line That line got me right there. He's like, I can do this, I can do that, but whatever I do, there's nothing he can do to bring her back. And we didn't get to see it. We didn't get to see it last episode because he was busy. There was a lot of stuff he had to deal with. He was mad at a shielder. And we didn't get to see that emotion, of 11, crying at the graves, when Amy and Rory disappear, and saying goodbye to River and all that at the in the TARDIS, and David Tennant crying right after talking to Rose on the beach, all that stuff. We didn't get to see that, and then we got to see sort of that he finally broke down about it, and because this Doctor's a little different, he's a little more tough, and he was angry, and then now this is that breaking down. And that line, whatever you do, you still won't be there. It's just like, oh.
Right.
Yeah. And then one that I thought was just really great line, and something that kind of hit me close to home because a friend of mine died recently, and it made me think when it was said. So, it's the day you lose someone. The day you lose someone isn't the worst. At least you have something to do. It's all the days they stay dead, and that was, that really resonated with me when I heard that, and I thought that was just a beautiful line, and it was just something you don't really think about, when you lose somebody, and so so bravo Stephen Moffat, and that's just a few of the many brilliant lines in this episode. Basically,
with him monologuing, he just has great quotes.
Basically, I could have just said the whole thing, and was the quotes of the episode because they were all great. Well, final thoughts. For me, this episode was so good. It was brilliant. This episode, has become one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who ever. This is the brilliant writing that I've come to expect from Stephen Moffat, and Capaldi, he should win all the awards for this, just all of them. It's a timey-wimey thing. I love that. I love the whole infinite loop, and that it was the Doctor at the beginning, which was really interesting and really cool. And I'm so happy to see Gallifrey again. This is what we've been waiting for ever since Eccleston came and said that Gallifrey is gone. There was a war and it's gone. This is the best episode of this series. This is the best Capaldi episode, and one of the best of Doctor Who for sure. So, I loved it.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely amazing. Simply amazing. It was an incredible episode, which really brings the whole season to a fantastic close. Look, finally an episode written like it's meant to be written. Spooky, timey-wimey, and a Doctor at his best. Hats off to Moffat for giving us something this season that blows away the last 2 seasons, let alone almost all of his work. So, good job.
Calculating. Voices from the Vortex gives Heaven Sent 10 out of 10.
Well,
and, oh my god, that promo.
Oh my god, the promo.
Oh my god, that promo.
So, promos? It was just promo. I don't know what to say. It was just... There's Gallifrey stuff. It's there. There's people in Time Lord robes, and... Oh, it's great. It's great.
We finally get to see Gallifrey, the Gallifreyan people, We have been. This is season 9, folks. We have been building to this since the very first episode of Eccleston's run. 2005 is when we started dreaming about the day he would step foot on Gallifrey again. And while we got a little bit of that, just a tiny little taste of it at the end of Tennant's run, and we got a little taste of it in the 50th, we have not been to Gallifrey. And now he comes home to a world ravaged by war, to a people who are desperate to be saved, and probably a government, the Time Lords, who are paranoid about this prophecy and his return.
Mm-hmm.
I am so excited. We see regeneration. We see that the general guy from the 50th, a character holding the staff of Rassilon, and what looks like a glove on his other hand. So a different character than Timothy Dalton, or a different person than Timothy Dalton, could be Rassilon. We see the return of a Shielder and the Sisterhood of Karn. Dude, I'm ready. Like, this Saturday cannot come fast enough. Well, Sunday for me, I have to see it next day. So
yeah.
I'm so excited to see Gallifrey again, and to see the Doctor get to walk in his own home again. We have been following his journey home, and it's finally here, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. I want to see where this has been going. I want to see how this series, comes full circle with this specific series. And yes, I want to see what we've been waiting for since Eccleston, is this Gallifrey coming back, finally being a player in this universe of Doctor Who, and can be part of stories, and can be somewhere he goes, and is something he's dealing with. But then again, I'm worried. It's like, what? I know there's going to be some catch or some twist. It's like, what's going to be?
Right.
He's there. Is he, is he going to lose it again? Or is it going to be like, it's not what he was expecting when he gets there? Obviously, there's this new thing. There's this new thing now with this prophecy. We all assumed that after the 50th, especially, that maybe he'd be welcomed back as a hero when he gets to Gallifrey. Like, oh, thank God you found us. You can return now that you've found us, we can return the planet to where it needs to be. All this stuff. But instead, it's like, look out, he's a hybrid. He wasn't supposed to get here, or whatever. There's going to be something crazy happening. So yeah.
Maybe we'll finally get answers to, where Gallifrey went, how long it's been there, and who the hell is Prisoner Zero.
That's all you want. Prisoner Zero.
Listen, I swear to you, the last episode of the show, when they finally retire Doctor Who, and season, 15 of New Who, the last season, and they're like, last episode, and when they get to the end of the adventure, and the Doctor's sitting in his TARDIS, leaning back, about to read the time machine, and he goes, wait a minute, who was Prisoner Zero? And it'll cut right there to the credits, and I will just throw stuff. I will throw it at the TV. It's like, no! That's Moffat!
And Steven!
Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. We're glad that you enjoyed this one, and when we see you next time, it will be for the final episode, Hellbent.
Yes.
Episode 12.
And we are hell-bent on reviewing it.
We are angels, adorable as such. We're heaven sent.
Yes.
Alright guys, have a great weekend, and we will see you again here in the Vortex.
Goodbye. This has been another Voices from the Vortex review, Series 9, starring Matthew Whitecamp as Matt, the Time Lord, Taylor Davidson as Taylor, the Time Lord, and Danielle Davidson as the sexy voice of the TARDIS. All views expressed are the opinions of the two dudes from Gallifrey, and as such, should be taken extremely seriously. Follow Voices from the Vortex on all social media, including Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. If you have any questions regarding the podcast, please email us at voicesfromthevortex@gmail.com. Doctor Who and all related materials is copyright BBC. No infringement of copyright is intended. All originally written material is fan fiction of a satirical nature. Please, Mr. Moffat, don't sue. See you next time in the Vortex!
Temporal flight engaged. Returning to the vortex. End of transmission.